The electronics that operate self-driving cars can process information and react much quicker than a human. They don't get drowsy, they don't drive distracted, and they can't drive drunk. Self-driving cars have potential to greatly decrease traffic accidents and increase safety on our roadways. Self-driving cars also have potential to help the disabled. Blind, deaf, and elderly individuals will not have to rely completely on public transit or other people for transportation. These vehicles can also decrease emissions and fuel consumption. Autonomously controlled vehicles are programmed to drive in the most efficient way possible, potentially using less fuel than a human driver. According to Sebastian Thrun, a Stanford researcher working with Google to develop this technology, autonomous cars can be programmed to drive very close together, in groups called platoons. This allows cars to draft off each other and move through the air with less resistance. Despite these lucrative possible benefits of self-driving cars, there are some shortcomings in this technology, as well as economic and moral issues that would be brought about if autonomous cars were brought into mainstream use. I believe the shortcomings to outweigh the benefits. Artificial intelligence and electronics can be very beneficial in assisting drivers, but should not replace the human behind the wheel. One of the most prominent issues which would be raised by the use of self-driving cars would be the moral ethical dilemma of whose safety to prioritize in an accident. Many are familiar with the trolley analogy representing the dilemma that one is forced into when making decisions that affect the safety of others. This analogy is a great example of the issues raised by self-driving cars. Imagine that a trolley is speeding down a track out of control. The track that the trolley is racing down forks into two separate routes. On one side of the fork is a citizen walking up the track who will not be able to get out of the way of the speeding trolley. On the other side of the fork are 5 workers who will also be killed if the trolley comes their way. You are standing next to the switch which can route the trolley onto either track. If you do nothing, the trolley will barrel down the track and kill the pedestrian. If you pull the switch to save the pedestrian, the trolley kills the 5 workers. How do you make this decision? Self-driving cars will inevitably be put into situations in which accidents are unavoidable. In an article regarding self-driving car technology, Jason Miller illustrates an applied example of this dilemma, stating, quote, "Sarah is traveling along a single-lane mountain road in an autonomous car that is fast approaching a narrow tunnel. Just before entering the tunnel, a child errantly runs into the road and trips in the center of the lane, effectively blocking the entrance to the tunnel. The car is unable to brake in time to avoid a crash. It has but 2 options: hit and kill the child, or swerve into the wall on either side of the tunnel, thus killing Sarah." End quote. When these situations arise, should the car sacrifice the safety of, say, pedestrians or motorcyclists to protect the occupants of the car? Or should it sacrifice the occupants of the car for others? Does the answer change if children are on board the vehicle? Also, who should make these decisions? Governments, programmers, engineers? When human drivers are placed in situations where they must make these decisions, they react with little conscious thought of anything but self-preservation. However, if these decisions are pre-made by programmers or lawmakers, it starts to sound a lot more like premeditated murder. These moral issues alone are enough to raise the question of whether it is right to allow self-driving cars on our roads. Moral issues aside, there are shortcomings in this technology which could make autonomous cars unsafe. The first and possibly most concerning is the fact that these systems are hackable. In an article published by Wired.com, the author of the article, Andrew Greenberg, describes the experience he had while driving a non-autonomous vehicle while researchers attempted to hack into the vehicle control systems. The researchers were able to control the radio, windshield wipers, engine, transmission, and even braking systems remotely. They were also able to constantly monitor the vehicle's location. Imagine the dangerous possibilities of hacking fully self-controlled cars. There have also been several recent occurrences of roadway deaths associated with autonomous cars. In 2016, a Tesla employee was riding in a Tesla Model S with autopilot activated. A tractor-trailer, which was traveling in the opposite direction of the Tesla, crossed the median and hit the vehicle head-on, killing the driver. The control system of the car is programmed to tune out detected objects which are above the vehicle, such as telephone lines or trees. The truck had a high ride height, which caused the car to disregard its presence and take no evasive action. The mainstream use of self-driving vehicles will also disrupt the transportation and automotive industries and result in the loss of millions of jobs. According to Perspective.com, an estimated 4 million jobs would be affected by this change, mainly related to the trucking industry. This would cause a huge ripple effect in our economy and leave many Americans jobless.
I've been driving for about 3 years. It would definitely be uncomfortable at first, but I think as time went on and I drove in it more and more, I would get more comfortable. Yeah, I would say the same answer as the previous question. I'm sure it'd be uncomfortable at first, and then I would get used to it. I could see it being dangerous, though, having the mix of cars, self driving, and just people driving in their cars. I think that it would definitely cause an economic disruption, which wouldn't be good, at least at the beginning. I think it might make more jobs in the automotive industry, just with manufacturing and supporting more complex vehicles. Um, and so I think it would be okay in the long run. I don't think we're at the point where technology is advanced enough to be safe and ethical. And even if we get to the point where there are hardly any crashes, there will still always be the ethical issue of whose safety to prioritize. And I don't think it will ever be ethical to decide in advance who to harm.
Electronic assistance can be a valuable tool in increasing the effectiveness and safety of motor vehicles. Examples include blind spot detection and braking assistance. However, when one considers the ethical issues that fully self-controlled vehicles bring about, as well as the current safety flaws in the technology and the economic disruption that would result from widespread use, it should be concluded that artificial intelligence should not be allowed to operate vehicles on our roadways.